Welcome to another weekly Melting Pot episode. Today I'm in conversation with the wonderful Shyama Kaviratne. Shyama is the co-founder of St Jude India Childcare Centers, which is a non-profit, and it provides free shelter and holistic care for children suffering from cancer and also for their parents. So thank you so much, Shyama. I am really honored to be able to speak with you today because I also am aware that you're doing a lot of meaningful work, and I'm sure just as I am keen, my listeners will also be very, very keen to hear all about it. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of Melting Pot.
Thank you, Parel, for inviting me. This is a first for me, so please bear with me. Uh, um, okay, I'll start from the beginning, which was exactly 15 years ago. We started St Judes. Um, Nihal and I were out of our, out of India for almost 22 years. He worked for a multinational, and we were posted all over. Though we kept visiting and going back, we had not stayed there for any length of time for 22 years. Uh, when we settled down there in 2005, one of the reasons was that my mother was aging and I wanted to be with her. And also, it was where we went to college and school, and we were members of clubs, and we knew a lot of friends of ours. We both worked there. So it was easy to go back. But we found a lot of change, and the change was very positive. Uh, people, the economy had opened up. People had satiated themselves with buying all the things that were forbidden before. They didn't have to go abroad, you could get it at your doorstep. And now they were ready to give back and share whatever they had with others, whether it was money or whether it was their skill. Now, that was a very pleasant surprise for us. So we had always wanted to give back too, and our abiding interest was with children. Mine was because when I grew up, my grandmother and aunt started a school for underprivileged children. And since I can remember age 5 onwards, I was playing with them and studying with them and making things with them. And so I'm very comfortable with being with people. And I
And
thought I'd go back and help
sorry,
children
and the school is was
in
in Mumbai.
Bombay, in
Okay.
our home,
Oh,
in
I see.
our garden.
Okay.
And it started with 2 abandoned children, orphan children rather, and then it grew to 125 because we started off by saying orphans only. Then all the little children came to say we've lost our mother and father, and we said, we'll take you in any way. So they went to the municipal school in the afternoon and came to us in the morning for a couple of hours. And it was really not education to start with, but just giving them milk and just be letting them play in our garden and be with them. And then it got a bit more structured. And then after my parents and my aunt and all passed away, my cousin started running it, and she was still doing that. So I thought I'll join her. And Nihal wanted to do something for children in education, with either education or nutrition. So when we reached there, our first few days were, settling down and looking at, reading through the newspaper. And one thing that kept recurring was on the third page, not page 3, but the third page of the Times of India. There
Right.
were little advertisements or slots which said, this child is needy, need so much for treatment of cancer, etc. So my husband sent money there initially. And the second month, he said, I must go and see what this is all about. And he visited it. It was an NGO under S Bridge Baikala. And he said, we asked for who are the people who donate to you. And we thought there'd be big donors. Apparently not. These kind of ads brought 200 rupees, 300 rupees from middle, lower class people who just wanted to give their little bit. And they collected a lot of funds that way for the treatment of cancer. And then we found out there were many NGOs and trusts that gave money for the treatment. So we went to see the Tata Memorial Hospital, and the person took us around, and we were very impressed by what they were doing. And when we came out and were waiting for our car, we saw a lot of children and families staying on the footpath. And so one of us turned around and asked, this is a common sight in Bombay if you don't live in Bombay. Especially at night, everyone comes out because they have a play open air, and it's, except the monsoons, is much nicer than being so many in a room. And they said, no, these children are here, these families, because one family member is being treated in the hospital. And at night, they come and sleep here, so they don't have to travel because they have no money and they don't live in Bombay. And so that was an idea that suddenly on our way home, we thought about it. As it happens, it was June, and that evening, it really poured very heavily in Bombay. And we were sitting comfortable in our home, having hot food, having dinner. And then we both looked at each other and thought of those families. And Nihal said, why don't you just go and bring a family here? So I said, I don't think we can do it. I'm a bit more practical than my husband, who uses his heart more than his head. And I said, this can't happen. I can't just go and this thing. But that's when the seed really was sown. And we said that what these people need is something they don't have, is a place to stay while undergoing this treatment. So our first center was in a PWD Chawl. It is a building belonging to the Mothers and Children Trust, Bombay Mothers and Children Trust. It was started in 1930 by two doctors who wanted it to be a hospital for women and children. But I don't think it was followed up. So this was just a place to stay for cancer people. Now, when we moved back to Bombay, I had someone called Anna Saldana, an architect, very well known in her field, to help me refurbish the apartment we had bought. And she would meet me on a Wednesday because she said, I go to a place and an NGO, I have a small NGO, and I went with her one day. She invited me, and that's when I saw this place. And they had a room where there were 8 families staying, and the adjoining area was empty with people just lying on the floor. Some had bandages, some had actually even um, tubes in them, and
And were they children or they were adults?
they're mixed.
Mixed.
Yes. And so I said, you know what? She said, no, there's no one staying there. It's empty. And she asked us to approach her father, who's Julio Ribeiro. Mr. Ribeiro is very well known. And he was a trustee. He's on the board of this NGO. So when he met Nihal, he said, yes, we'll consider it. But one of the things is that you'll have to join the board. And that's how the space came to us. And we had to give a donation in lieu of rent. And I forget exactly, but I think the first tranche was for 5 years, could be renewed for another 5. Now, we had no idea really what we were going to do. So, my husband, all our friends, I must say, were politely discouraging us and saying, "Your NGOs, you don't know, you'll never get place, etc." But my husband's quite a determined person. And he said, "Look, let's try and find a way." So we invited our friends' children for a first meeting on the 8th of February, 15 years ago. They were all between 35 and 45. And very respectfully, they came to have a drink, not knowing why we had invited them.
Right.
And it was lovely seeing them. We knew their parents very well. They were sort of, some of them third generation friends, some of them, a doctor, a GP had looked after us for over 30 years. His son came. Each one had a different skill, which was one was an accountant, an architect, etc. And we were about 10 of us, and we met in our living room. And Nihal said, "This is what we want to do. That is, have a home, a place to stay for children suffering from cancer who have no place to stay. And it should be safe and clean." Because those were the two things that hit our eye the most. And we thought that was very essential for the treatment. And he also said, "The first thing I want to tell you is that I do not want you to go out and get money. That is our problem. And he put in his first salary of last year. And he said, "But I want you to make it happen."
Mm.
So, and he had already got 8 jobs to be done, from premises to accounts to admin. So each one picked what they liked. And then he said, "You can form your groups, you can invite other people if you need any help." And we met once a month after that, always discussing what we could do. But then before we left, he said that I want it ready by the 1st of April. And they got it ready by the 31st of March.
Wow.
So, and what they keep saying is that we were given this responsibility. So it was, no one was checking with us. There was no limit or no this thing. We didn't have to keep asking everyone. Whatever job had chosen to do, we were supposed to do it, and we did it. And his motto is, think big, start small, and move fast. And so our first center opened 15 years ago. And for 18 months, we tried to get the model right, because it was our first experience, first to convince families to come to us, because the hospital, which was Tata Memorial, had a social service center where they knew where to send the people, because there are many other dharamshalas and all. But it's not free there, and they have to pay for even a bucket of water, and it's not clean.
Mm.
And so when they started coming to us, we had a schedule which said that they got up in the morning, they had their breakfast, they got into the transport we had arranged, went to hospital in time, came back, had lunch, rested, then activity time. So 4 to 7 people would sit outside in our learning area, as we called it. Then dinner and bed. Of course, we didn't have TV. We had many rules, or that was the way of life for St Judes. And they all, no vegetarian, no non-vegetarian, because that place didn't allow that. And everyone said, you're doing the wrong thing. People will take advantage of you. It's all free. And they're never going to stay there. There's no TV, etc. And that time there were no mobiles. But you won't believe it. In a few days, they recognized the benefits of staying with us. That they had transport, they had food. We started by giving them essentials, starter packs as we call them, and milk. And then we never started giving them fresh vegetables because that was difficult to divide. So one of our things was equality. Everyone was treated equally. Whichever room was empty, the next person got it.
So what was the capacity? How many rooms
Yes.
did you have?
We started with 8 units, which is really small, but just right to get the model right. So we call them units. They're actually rooms, but we were told not to have a door because then they can claim tenancy. And so it's got a plastic curtain. Plus, there is a doorway to but with a plastic curtain. And also, we didn't use any wood because of cockroaches and bed bugs, which come from, it's common in Bombay. So we had a steel bed, a steel cupboard, stone shelves, and the mattress and pillows were covered with Rexine, so they could be wiped with Dettol. And the child, if with treatment, how with chemo and all that. And the 2 mattresses were given, one on the floor, because if the child was very young, it would sleep with the mother on the floor. And if the child was older, it would sleep on the bed with the mother or father. But they decided, and they were very happy with that. They didn't want 2 beds. And during the afternoon, the child would sleep on the floor. So if the mother went to the toilet or something, there was no fear of falling. So all this was done, and everything we did had a reason for doing it. And we gave them utensils. The cupboard was theirs to put their valuables. And the stone shelves were arranged such that the medicines were on the top. Then they had one of games. Then they had their gods. And the others were, quickly what they needed, water bottles, etc. So, and they had a soft board where that was the only thing they could personalize. They would put their own paintings, at that time, photographs. And there was a learning area, which was like a living room, where everyone came out and sat between the hours that they were allowed to. 2 to 4, they had to rest or be in their room. And the kitchen had facilities for them to eat there. So they cooked, they ate, and then they had this learning area.
And so you had volunteers who would come and make sure that the upkeep of the place was maintained, because with cancer patients or any patients, if they are undergoing treatment, as you mentioned, cleanliness is very, very important. So did they have to take care of their unit themselves, or did you have volunteers who came in and helped with that? That's one. And two, did you have so how did the hospital know which families to send to you? I mean, were there like, who were the families? Were they families who could absolutely not afford? Because you mentioned that the dharamshalas took money. So maybe the families that could afford to pay a rental or whatever was involved. would be sent to dharamshalas, and families that would absolutely not be able to pay anything and they'd come from really far were the ones who were directed to your center? I mean, how did it work?
I'll explain. It took us a couple of months to get the social security office understand what we were all about.
Okay.
So I or any one of my friends who were helping me in this would go and sit there, and we had certain criteria. One is that we decided we were not going to do the due diligence because we were not equipped to test whether the certificate they brought that they were was enough. And so if the hospital termed them as no charge, means their treatment was free. That was the first criteria. Secondly, that they had a treating doctor, and that there was a chance of cure in childhood cancer caught early. There is a very high rate of cure. We didn't want to go into palliative because those are also treated there, but they're in pain, managing pain and all. So they had to have a doctor who's treating them, who was positive and had 70% chance of cure. They need to be NG, so non-paying in the hospital. They also needed to only come with their mother and father, but had to have their mother and father with them. No other siblings, no grandparents, no aunts. And all this we came to know after a few months, because someone brought a child with a brother, and the brother was well and wanted to do many things, and the child was denied, and there was too much conflict. So we started with the no charge and a treating doctor. And then we decided the parents had to come because we had an experience where the elder sister stayed behind and she couldn't cope with the emotion of the child or feeding the child correctly. And it's essential to have both mother and father because, as you know, in our hospitals, when the doctor sees you, he gives you a prescription and you have to run around to get it, stand in queues. And one person can't with a sick child, especially with cancer, if they've just had some treatment, do it. So this was what, and they had to be from out of Bombay. So we took no one who lived in Bombay. If they had relatives, they would go there, then they wouldn't need to stay with us.
Right, right.
So these were the main things.
Right.
So based on that, we would say these are eligible, and they started coming, and then by word of mouth, people said, no, it's a clean place, it's a nice place, you get food, it's free. So we had a waiting list. Then what happened was Dr. Banavle, who was the main pediatric oncologist looking after these children, asked them, where do you come from? Because you come on time, you have your files, you never miss a treatment, etc., and you'll look happy. And he came to visit our center. I happened to be there. And that was how he started ensuring that people came. Because he saw what we offered, like transport and food, so that helped a lot. We didn't have to struggle, and it made a huge difference to them to have children who were not abandoning treatment, because that was one of the main things they worried about, because the child had to come over. I'm sure you know, but this kind of cancer is really, the treatment is for 3 or more years. And the first 3-4 months are crucial. And then they're given medication for 3 months to take home initially, and they have to come back every 3 months. And then it's 6 months, depending on how they progress. A lot of them never came back because they had no place to stay, they couldn't afford it. So, as per estimates shared by the Tata Memorial, our centers have helped in bringing down the treatment abandonment from over 30% to less than 5% now.
Wow.
So they had in a paper said that the difference that we are making, and therefore they partner with us and are encouraging us.
So then how did you, because from one center in Mumbai, today you stand at 38 centers all across the country. So how, I mean, that's phenomenal. And how did that come about?
Okay, to answer your second question about helpers and volunteers, we have this group of people called team members or team leaders. And these are the first 8 people who met. And we are all volunteers. And then if they knew a friend who was, say, like-minded and wanted to help. So our team members expanded. So for example, the second circle is to ensure transport and water, electricity to make it happen. There would be one team leader and under them 2 team members or 1, depending on how many we could. So they would ensure all this happened. Then we had one staff member. The first one was an elderly lady, experienced. She had worked with a doctor as a receptionist for many years. And we had one other girl under her and one for the activity. So we shared, one came from 7 to 4 and the other from 4 to 8.
Shared the responsibilities.
Shared the responsibility.
Yeah.
And the girl that came in the morning's responsibility was to ensure everything was clean. And they went to the hospital on time, they ate breakfast, etc., etc. The girl in the evening would show them some arts and crafts. And we got some news. And Mrs. Raute would supervise all this. And every day a statement would be sent to us. We had a template which would give the name of the parents, the treatment, and whether the water, there was no shortage of water, electricity, etc., etc. So that at a glance we knew what was happening.
Yeah.
But for the first,
in terms of nutrition, how did you? Because a few months ago I had a conversation with Purnota from Cuddles Foundation.
yes,
And they try and, I mean, obviously you're aware, they try and ensure that nutrition, which is a very important part of treatment for cancer for children, is taken care of. So at your center, how did you ensure that? Was there some kind of back and forth? Did you not collaborate, but did you work with Cuddles Foundation or the hospital or some nutritionist to figure out what kind of food and nutrition is important for the kids who are being treated? Not necessarily the parents, but for the children who were there specifically for the treatment. Did you try and bring that aspect in as well?
not initially.
Okay.
We gave them milk. We make sure they had fruit.
Okay.
But not, we wouldn't buy a lot, 1 per child, so it wouldn't get bad. And we gave them the starter pack. Then we started giving them rations, more rations, when we realized they couldn't buy it. Then when we started, yes, we got information from the doctors. Like someone suggested giving them vitamin pills, and someone was willing to get them free. And the doctor said, no, it may not always work with the treatment, and it will be difficult to decide what not. But they suggested a protein powder, which is made by an NGO whom they recommended. So we still get that for them.
Oh.
Then we started with pulses, we started giving them moog and this, so they could substitute their food with protein in a way, paneer. We were told them not to give it them sweets. We used to give them rasgulla, chocolate. All that was stopped. Even biscuits, Maggi noodles, all that was stopped. So it was really fresh, wholesome food. Therefore, each one has a cabinet and a stove to themselves. So they cook morning and evening, fresh food. We don't give a fridge to them to store any food. We do have a fridge in the center, which has milk and their medicines, because when they get medicine, they have to keep it in a cold place. So we have little boxes, each one puts their medicine in that. It's really meant for that. So it's really fresh food.
Oh,
So let me explain what a center is. A center is ideally 12 units, 12 rooms, a learning area, enough for them to sit and their parents, two a gents toilet and a ladies toilet, so 2 or 3 bathing areas, two or three toilets in each section. And now we've started for handicap,
okay.
and we have something called the west, it's not the west, Anglo-Indian toilet, which, because the doctor was on our team, it can be used by someone who can use it in different ways. And the first one of our first children had her leg amputated. So if it was the Indian style one, we wouldn't have had to keep, be able to have her. So these are the things we have in an ideal center. I've described the unit. And for the children, we have, of course, now what we started with and what we are doing now has really, we've come a long way. But we had games and arts and crafts, and the mothers did embroidery on sari. We'd buy one sari and a white one, and they would embroider. And if they hadn't washed their hands, you could see that there were dark marks. So we taught them how to wash hands, the importance of all through games, this kind of thing. And it's amazing. Those 8 families, there was a Muslim, I remember. They were, you can make out by the surnames. They were from different castes and communities, but they all had a common cause to look after their child, and they got along famously. And no one said, no, we won't eat from the same place. So all that, we've never experienced that anywhere.
Yeah, because the priority is, the
And they
reason why
help
they
each
are
other.
there
It's
is
amazing how they help each other.
yeah. So let's move on then to, like I asked you, how did you then decide to expand to so many centers all across the country?
Okay. The first one was Indian Cancer Society, which has a 4-story building opposite, very close to the Tata Memorial Hospital. And they had the top floor, they were doing some weaving, which was really not helping they look after cancer survivors basically and give them jobs to be done, like making bags or printing or something. But they found this was just waste of space. So when they saw that we needed this, they gave us 2 rooms. So our second and third center was started there
Okay.
at 30 families, 2 centers, common dining room, and that was how it started.
Okay.
Then our 4th center was thanks to Tata Memorial Hospital, who saw the difference we were making, because by now we had 38 children. So they gave us a place uh, in their other hospital, which is a research hospital in New Bombay, Kharghar. They gave us an old whole building where we built 3 centers and one for bone marrow transplant, because they carry out all bone marrow transplants there. So we had 4 rooms designed according to them. They were slightly different from what we offer, because they had to be individual rooms, parents and also they couldn't make. And so they could do 4 transplants at a time as compared to one which they could do before. So
Right.
that was it. And then we moved to Calcutta. That also thanks to Tata Memorial, because they opened an hospital there called the Tata Memorial Center, a Tata Center it's called. And they were building. So when they went there, they said, our building is coming up, we'll give you 2 floors. But we didn't want to wait for the Premashray, the building to come up. So we took 2 flats and tried to, without making much change, accommodate them in the same way. And as soon as they gave it, we moved to Premashray and gave up this. And then other hospitals got to know. So the ones we have in Varanasi, in Vellore, in Guwahati, is thanks to Tata Memorial, because they gave us place there, or they were going there. So they told us to go. Delhi, we thought was important to have something there. And AIMS does the most fantastic work, AIMS Hospital. So all our children go there. We have almost 41 children there, 4 centers. Then we went to Jaipur, which is a lovely story. I won't get into it, but we were given this huge land by a family who lost their daughter to cancer. And so when they came and saw what we were doing, they offered it. They built it to our specifications, and we have 41 children there. But they go to separate hospitals. They're cancer hospitals, but not purely for children.
Okay.
So they have fewer people, and they come from the surrounding areas, but now it's full. Now, you see, after a time, the returnees come back for their treatment. So we really need to grow.
Yeah.
Hyderabad, there was a very nice lady who suffered from cancer, was a survivor, and she was keen on opening. So we went where we either had the hospital or the doctors or a team member or someone who was willing to fund us. So that's how
And
we
at
got.
all these centers, you have obviously then you probably needed to do
Yes,
a lot of scouting around, a lot of creating awareness so that you could get volunteers to come and
also
support
money.
money as well as volunteers to come and support you in those
Right.
respective centers, right?
That's right. So our policy, the way we started was show and not ask.
Okay, right.
So we would bring people to the centers, tell them what we are doing, and if they wanted to give, whichever way, whether it was money or help or what, they would give it. And we broke it down that a center, a 12-unit center costs X, running it costs X amount, and individual units, say, cost 50,000 a year. So if you gave 50,000, you got a little frame outside and you could dedicate it to anyone. People, most people, I would say, out of all these, don't stop, because 50,000 a year is nothing.
Hmm.
And we send reports. I think one of the strengths we have is we send a detailed report of every child who stayed there. So they know
So
what
there's a
happened.
lot of transparency, which
Absolutely.
is important,
Absolutely.
and it builds on, I guess, it builds on trust and
Oh,
confidence.
yes.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about obviously the pandemic, um, and because of the hospitals being overwhelmed with people with patients who had the virus and they were trying to get treatment. There have been reports that I've been reading about how a lot of specifically the cancer patients were not able to get continued treatment because of the fact that the hospital beds, the hospitals were basically overwhelmed. So is that something that you saw as well? Did you find fewer patients coming back, or fewer families with their children coming back? How do you see the impact?
So to start with, when the lockdown came in Bombay, I'll start with Bombay because that's our biggest uh,
area
and the most
yeah.
are there. We wanted to cut down. We didn't want to take in, we were afraid for the families who were already there. What would happen to them? But the doctor said cancer doesn't stop, and so shouldn't you. And so they don't. So Tata Memorial, we have a campus where we house 160 children and families in 3 buildings. They're all, we've got 14 centers there. So we call them. So they decided to send a doctor to us. They would come in the morning and treat the children. It's only those who wanted to go had to go for either radiation or chemo would be sent to the hospital. So they would come and give all the injections, take the blood report, all that they would do. So the parents didn't have to go. So, and we had it very strict. They would go down in few numbers, change their clothes, bathe. We had a system in place.
So you sort of controlled unnecessary exposure.
Exactly. Then the first center, which was only 8. So anyone who had a problem or tested for COVID was sent there, isolated. Also new patients, which the Tata Memorial said they're desperate, you have to take them. We would keep them there, have their tests done to make sure they didn't have before we brought them to our center. Then 3 months down the line, when the railways started, Tata Memorial had special passes for children and families who were being treated in all the hospital, adults, children. So they would give us a letter, and all the parents who had finished their treatment would get a place to sit because it's a long journey home. And those who lived in Maharashtra, we hired private cars and made sure that each one was a staff member, and rations and things for the next few days, because some of the villages didn't let them come in. They had tents outside. So they would be dropped there, and then they had enough to survive for a couple of days because they can't carry more.
Yeah.
So we did that. The other thing we did was we had to send medicine, the 3 monthly medicine, because they couldn't come for. So the doctors guided us and they gave us the medicine. And thanks to Blue Dart and Parel, whose distribution is fantastic, they volunteered to deliver it to the patients throughout India. And the same happened everywhere else. So when they stopped, no one took in new patients.
Yeah, but they continued with the existing patients to ensure that the continued treatment was being given.
So we didn't stop once.
Yeah.
We now are 1/3, only because we have to keep distancing in
Yeah.
the centers.
Yeah.
But if there's an emergency, then the doctor said this person needs to be treated, you have to. And we then try and put them in a guest house.
Yeah.
Also, the new people, returnees who come back, we don't take them in immediately. They're tested, kept in the guest house. Some of them come for a day or two, then they go back directly. We don't want them to mix.
Right. Right.
Even for our staff, we don't allow them public transport. Those who we've hired cars which pick up certain people and they've been working from home. So we have not stopped. In fact,
Yeah. I think that's such
working
a,
harder than ever.
yeah. And I think that is such a, it's so heartening to hear that, because it's so important to, for your focus not to be done. Yes, it is, it's devastating as to what is happening in the current scenario, but you're still continuing with your good work, and you're still trying through your centers and through all these different ways to protect the patients, the parents who are at this point in time, so much in need of that support. And I think that is absolutely incredible. And I'm really, really, I can't say, I'm humbled to hear how you've managed to continue to put all of this together. And that's quite amazing, Shyama, seriously.
But what I'd like to add here is that
Yeah,
without the support of the doctors,
doctors,
I,
absolutely. Yeah,
without them, we would have had to stop.
yeah, yeah,
They guided us, they helped us, I can't even begin to tell you how much they did for us. I mean, Tata Memorial Hospital, looking after all our patients, and other hospitals, very supportive, guiding us at every step, every day. Their lives were open, and they are the ones who told us what to do.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
told
But
us, don't
the
stop.
fact that you didn't give up, the
Yes,
fact,
they
yeah,
said, don't give up, and then they were with us
yeah,
throughout.
yeah.
So, full marks to them. All credit should go
I
to them.
think I think obviously it has to work hand in hand.
But they've been amazing. That's all I can say. Dedicated, fearless, and I have no words to. And these are doctors who are not, shall I say, they're working in general hospitals, and
Yeah,
that tells it all. But their dedication is just,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, amazing, amazing. I'm so happy that we were able to have this conversation, and thank you so much, Shama, for sharing all the good work that and where you started from and where you are today is absolutely credible, phenomenal, and I wish you all the very best. And I hope St. Jude, St. Jude centers go from strength to strength, and you're able to accommodate more and more patients and families. And I think your support is so important because it enables them to, like you mentioned, um, a lot of families halfway through just give up because a lot of people come from villages or from really far off places, and India is so huge that if they did not have the
A
support.
hand to hold them through the journey. That's all
Correct.
we do. That's
Yeah,
all we
and
do.
a place to stay and
Yeah.
provide them with whatever is necessary, and the children are able to survive, and go back into the world. I think that is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so
But
much.
I need to add something here.
Sure.
We have started, because you say go out into the world, we thought hard about it. And in the 15th year, we have launched something called St Judes for Life, which is we've looked after them and got them where they are now. But they, to address the longer term challenges that childhood cancer survivors face during their lifetime, through partnerships, the St. Jude's for Life initiative will seek to support the survivors in the spheres of education, skilling, counseling, insurance, medical needs, and employment. St. Jude for Life aims to fulfill the aspirations of these children and help them realize their potential by providing them support.
Wow.
So that is our
Next goal. I was going to ask you, and thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure all my listeners all over the world will definitely, I mean, one, of course, it's being appreciated what you're doing, but two is they probably also step up and give you a helping hand. I mean, there's no guarantees, but I'm sure, I'm sure that there's your voice is being heard. That I can say for sure. So
people need all the help they need.
yeah,
That's
no.
all we're doing. As I said, we're just holding.
You're providing that. You're providing them that platform, and there are a lot of people out there in the entire world who are always willing to give that helping hand. So I do hope that some of the listeners and now the viewers as well, because this is also being a recorded visual, it's a video recording as well. So I'm hoping that people will come out and try and help and support in whatever way they can. So thank you so much once again, Shyama, and it's just been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Pal, for requesting me to be here, and I'm glad I had the guts to do it.
And you've done that. Yes. No, you've been so wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.